The amber liquid swirled in my glass like liquid gold, catching the city lights 30 floors below. I stood at our penthouse window, watching my wife Emily through the reflection as she giggled into her phone in the next room. The sound cut through me like broken glass. My wife is laughing at something, I muttered to myself, taking another sip of the 18-year-old Macallan. And unless our cat learned to text, it's probably not me. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Jack Morrison, Senior Vice President of Strategic Development at Blackstone Financial. That's what my business card said. What they didn't say was that I'd been married to Emily Morrison, Senior Manager of Corporate Relations at the same firm, for 8 years. 8 years of climbing the corporate ladder together, attending the same stuffy parties, sharing the same circle of ambitious friends. 8 years of what I thought was partnership. Emily's laughter grew louder, more intimate. I turned slightly, catching her reflection in the window. She was curled up on our Italian leather sofa, her auburn hair cascading over her shoulder as she whispered into her phone. The same phone she now kept locked, face down, always within arm's reach. Monica said the funniest thing today, she'd tell me over dinner. Monica thinks we should vacation in the Hamptons. Monica suggested I try that new restaurant downtown. Monica Hartwell, Emily's boss. Director of Corporate Development, 15 years my senior, with the kind of predatory smile that made junior executives nervous and senior partners interested. Everything had become about Monica's opinions, Monica's suggestions, Monica's brilliant insights. I finished my scotch and set the glass on the marble windowsill. Tomorrow night was the quarterly corporate gala at the Meridian Hotel. Black tie, champagne, and the usual cast of characters playing their usual games of power and influence. Emily had been excited about it for weeks, shopping for a new dress, getting her hair done, talking endlessly about who would be there. She'd barely mentioned that I was her date. The giggling stopped. I heard her padding across the hardwood floor in her silk slippers, the rustle of expensive fabric as she moved. In the reflection, I watched her slip her phone into her purse with the careful precision of someone hiding evidence. "Jack?" Her voice carried that artificial sweetness she used when she wanted something. "Are you coming to bed?" I turned to face her. Emily stood in the doorway wearing a black negligee I'd never seen before. The price tag was probably still hidden in her jewelry box, along with the receipt she thought I'd never find, just like the receipts from the downtown boutique hotel, just like the credit card charges at restaurants I'd never been to. "In a minute," I said, forcing a smile. "Just reviewing some files for tomorrow's presentation." She nodded, but her eyes were already distant, calculating. "Don't stay up too late. Tomorrow's important." Important, right. After she disappeared into the bedroom, I pulled out my own phone and scrolled through her recent social media activity. 3 new photos from lunch today, all tagged at Café Lumière downtown. Emily looked radiant, her smile genuine in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in months. But she wasn't alone in the photos. A man's hand was visible in one shot, reaching for the wine glass across from her. Expensive watch, manicured nails, artistic fingers. I'd never been to Café Lumière. The bedroom door clicked shut. I heard the shower start running, the sound of Emily's nightly routine beginning. 30 minutes of expensive skincare products and hair treatments, all for my benefit, she claimed. I opened my laptop and did what any suspicious husband in the digital age would do. I started investigating. Emily's credit card statements painted an interesting picture. Lunches at galleries, dinners at wine bars, shopping trips to boutiques that specialized in artistic clothing. Her calendar, which she'd always shared with me, had developed mysterious gaps. Meeting with Monica had become her default explanation for any unexplained absence. But Monica had been in Chicago for 3 days last week, according to the company newsletter. Emily had claimed to be meeting with her every single one of those days. I leaned back in my chair, pieces clicking together like a puzzle I'd been too trusting to solve. The new jewelry she claimed Monica had recommended, the sudden interest in modern art, the way she'd started pronouncing certain words differently, as if she'd been spending time with someone who spoke with a slight accent. The shower stopped. I closed the laptop and headed toward the bedroom, my mind already working through possibilities, scenarios, plans. Emily was toweling her hair when I entered. She looked up with that practiced smile, the one she used in board meetings and networking events. "Ready for tomorrow night?" she asked. "Absolutely," I replied, and for the first time in months, I meant it. The Meridian Hotel's ballroom sparkled like a jewelry box, all crystal chandeliers and gold trim. I adjusted my black tie and surveyed the crowd of Blackstone Financial's finest. Senior partners clustered near the bar. their wives displaying this season's fashion choices like armor. Junior executives hovered at the edges, hoping to catch the attention of someone who mattered. Emily glided through the crowd beside me, stunning in a midnight blue gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She'd been animated during the car ride, chattering about who would be there, what deals might be discussed, which partnerships could be formed. She hadn't mentioned that I might be useful for any of those conversations. "Jack Morrison!" The voice boomed across the room. David Chen, one of our senior partners, approached with his usual politician's smile. "How's the Henderson acquisition coming along?" "Ahead of schedule," I replied, shaking his hand. "We should have the contracts ready for review by Friday." "Excellent. Emily, you look radiant tonight." Emily beamed, but I noticed her eyes scanning the crowd even as she accepted the compliment. "Looking for someone." "Have you seen Monica?" she asked David. "I wanted to discuss the Morrison account with her." The Morrison account. My account. The one I'd been developing for 6 months. "She's holding court by the champagne fountain," David said, gesturing toward the far end of the ballroom. "Fair warning, though, she's in one of her moods tonight." Emily excused herself immediately, leaving me standing with David as she made a beeline across the room. I watched her go, noting the way she moved with purpose, the slight flush of excitement on her cheeks. "Trouble in paradise?" David asked quietly. I turned back to him, keeping my expression neutral. "Just the usual corporate dynamics." David sipped his whiskey. "Well, if you need any advice, Jack, you know where to find me. Sometimes the most obvious solutions are right in front of us." Before I could ask what he meant, he melted back into the crowd, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a growing sense that I wasn't the only one who'd noticed the changes in my marriage. I made my way toward the bar, nodding at colleagues and making small talk about quarterly projections and market trends. But my attention was focused on the far end of the room, where Emily had found Monica. Monica Hartwell commanded attention wherever she went. Tonight she wore a crimson dress that hugged her curves and made her silver hair look like spun platinum. She was surrounded by a small crowd of admirers, mostly men, all hanging on her every word. Emily had positioned herself at Monica's right hand, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear, nodding enthusiastically at observations I couldn't catch. But there was something desperate in her posture, something needy in the way she leaned toward Monica whenever she spoke. Quite a sight, isn't it? I turned to find Sophie Chen, David's daughter and one of our most promising junior executives. She was looking in the same direction I had been, her expression thoughtful. "Monica's always been good at collecting admirers," I said carefully. I wasn't talking about Monica. Sophie's dark eyes met mine. "Emily's been spending a lot of time trying to get into Monica's inner circle lately." "They work closely together." "Do they?" Sophie raised an eyebrow. "Because Monica told my father last week that she barely sees Emily except at mandatory meetings. Said Emily's been distracted, unfocused, making mistakes." The information hit me like a cold splash of water. Emily had been claiming to spend hours in Monica's office, working on special projects, building their professional relationship. If Monica was saying the opposite, "Maybe I misunderstood," I said. "Maybe." Sophie's smile was knowing. "Or maybe Emily's been building a different kind of relationship entirely." Before I could respond, Sophie nodded toward the entrance. "Speaking of relationships, looks like the art crowd showed up." I followed her gaze and felt my stomach drop. A group of people had entered the ballroom, clearly not Blackstone employees. They wore their wealth differently than we did, more casual, more artistic, more deliberately bohemian. And leading them was a man I recognized from Emily's social media photos. Tall, lean, with dark hair that looked deliberately tousled and the kind of stubble that required professional maintenance. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit with no tie, his shirt open at the collar to reveal a silver chain. He moved through the crowd like he owned it, stopping to air-kiss women and shake hands with men who clearly knew him. "Ethan Reeves," Sophie said quietly. "Owns the Meridian Gallery downtown. Monica's been trying to get Blackstone involved in some kind of arts partnership." Ethan Reeves. I filed the name away as I watched him work the room. He had the easy confidence of someone who'd never doubted his own appeal, the kind of man who collected admirers the way other people collected business cards. And Emily was staring at him like he was the only person in the room. I watched as she excused herself from Monica's circle and began moving toward Ethan. Not directly, that would be too obvious. Instead, she drifted from group to group, timing her movement so she'd intercept his path near the champagne fountain. The collision was perfectly orchestrated. Emily laughed as champagne splashed on her dress, Ethan immediately offering his handkerchief, both of them making a show of the accident while their eyes locked in a way that made my chest tighten. "Well," Sophie said softly, "that's interesting." I was about to respond when Monica's voice cut through the ambient noise of the party. Jack Morrison! She was approaching us, her smile predatory and amused. Just the man I wanted to see. Monica, I nodded politely. Enjoying the party? Always. But I'm much more interested in business. She moved closer, her perfume expensive and overwhelming. I've been thinking about your Henderson acquisition. Brilliant work, really. The kind of strategic thinking that deserves recognition. Thank you. In fact, I was wondering if you might be interested in discussing some opportunities. Private opportunities. Her hand brushed my arm, the contact deliberate and lingering. Perhaps we could continue this conversation somewhere quieter? I glanced toward the champagne fountain. Emily and Ethan were deep in conversation, her hand resting on his arm as she laughed at something he'd said. She looked more animated than I'd seen her in months. I'd like that, I said, turning back to Monica. Her smile widened. Wonderful. There's a lovely rooftop bar upstairs, much more intimate than this circus. Sounds perfect. As we moved toward the elevator, I caught Emily's eye across the room. For a moment, her face went completely white. Then panic flashed across her features as she realized what she was seeing. Her husband leaving the party with her boss. I smiled and waved, then followed Monica into the elevator. The doors closed on Emily's horrified expression, and I felt the first real satisfaction I'd experienced in months. The rooftop bar was everything Monica had promised. Intimate, sophisticated, and completely empty except for the bartender and a few late-night couples occupying corner tables. The city spread out below us like a circuit board, all glowing lights and geometric patterns. Monica ordered a martini. I stuck with scotch. You know, she said, settling into the plush leather booth across from me, I've always admired your approach to business, Jack. You're methodical, thorough, and you don't let emotions cloud your judgment. I try to keep things professional. Exactly. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, which is why I think you and I could work very well together. Emily, bless her heart, is brilliant, but she's been distracted lately, making poor choices. I sipped my scotch, keeping my expression neutral. What kind of poor choices? Monica's smile was sharp as a blade. The kind that involve mixing business with pleasure, the kind that could damage her career if she's not careful. My phone buzzed, a text from Emily. Where did you go? Monica said you left together? I ignored it. I'm not sure I follow, I said. Of course you don't. You're loyal, Jack. It's one of your best qualities. Monica reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. But loyalty can be a weakness when it's not reciprocated. Another buzz. Another text from Emily. Jack, please call me. I can explain everything. Explain what, exactly? Monica, I said carefully, if you have something to tell me, I'd prefer you just say it. She laughed, a sound like crystal breaking. Direct. I like that. She withdrew her hand and took a long sip of her martini. Your wife has been having an affair, Jack, with Ethan Reeves, the gallery owner you just saw her throw herself at downstairs. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I'd suspected, of course. The evidence had been building for weeks, but hearing it stated so bluntly, so casually, still felt like a punch to the gut. How do you know? Because I make it my business to know everything that affects my department. Emily's been using company resources to conduct her little romance. Company credit cards for intimate dinners, company time for long lunches, company connections to boost her lover's business profile. My phone was buzzing constantly now. I pulled it out and saw a string of increasingly frantic messages from Emily. Where are you? Monica is asking weird questions about us. Something's wrong, Jack. Please come back. I need to talk to you right now. I turned the phone face down on the table. What do you want from me, Monica? Nothing you're not already capable of giving. She signaled the bartender for another round. I want your talent, your strategic mind, your complete focus on what really matters. Emily's been a liability for months, but I couldn't act without proof. Now I have it. Proof? Monica pulled out her own phone and scrolled through several photos. Hotel receipts with Emily's signature, credit card statements showing charges at romantic restaurants, security camera footage from the Blackstone parking garage showing Emily and Ethan in what could generously be called a compromising position. She's been sloppy, Monica said. Careless, the kind of behavior that reflects poorly on the entire department. I stared at the photos, feeling something cold and hard settling in my chest. Not just anger, that would have been simple. This was calculation, pure and focused. What happens now? That depends on you. Monica leaned back, studying me with those predatory eyes. You could confront her, Make a scene. Let emotion drive your decisions. Or you could be smart about this. Strategic. Strategic how? Emily's made herself vulnerable. Her lover's gallery is struggling financially. Did you know that? He's been courting Blackstone's sponsorship for months, hoping to save his business. Emily's been his inside connection, feeding him information about our corporate giving budget, our partnership criteria. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Emily's sudden interest in art, her knowledge of gallery operations, her mysterious meetings that weren't actually with Monica. She's been helping him, I said. More than helping. She's been actively lobbying for a partnership that would funnel hundreds of thousands of company dollars into his failing business, a partnership that would require board approval, which she's been trying to secure through me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call, not a text. Emily's name flashed on the screen along with her photo. A picture from our honeymoon in Tuscany, both of us laughing at some joke I could no longer remember. I declined the call. "So what's your proposal?" I asked. Monica's smile was triumphant. "Simple. You help me document Emily's misconduct, and I'll make sure the Henderson acquisition gets you the recognition you deserve. Senior vice president, your own department, a substantial raise. Everything you've been working toward. And Emily? Emily made her choices. Now she lives with the consequences." I finished my scotch and stood up. "I need to think about this." "Of course." Monica rose as well, smoothing her crimson dress. "But don't think too long, Jack. Emily's not the only one who's been making poor choices lately. Ethan Reeves has been cutting corners, using substandard materials, inflating his invoices, the kind of behavior that could bring down anyone associated with him." The threat was subtle, but clear. Emily wasn't just risking her career, she was risking criminal charges. "I'll be in touch," I said. "I'm sure you will." The elevator ride down felt like descending into hell. When the doors opened on the ballroom level, I could see Emily immediately. She was standing near the entrance, her face pale and strained, scanning the crowd desperately. She spotted me the moment I stepped out of the elevator. Relief flooded her features, followed quickly by guilt and fear. "Jack!" She rushed toward me, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "Thank God. I was so worried. Monica said you two went to discuss business, but then she came back alone and wouldn't tell me anything." "Just a work conversation," I said evenly. "About what? The Henderson account?" "Jack, if she's trying to take credit for your work." "It's fine, Emily. Everything's fine." But as I looked at my wife, her flushed cheeks, her bright eyes, her beautiful lying face, I knew that nothing would ever be fine again. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I was completely okay with that. I started small. That's always been my approach to complex problems. Break them down into manageable pieces, analyze each component, then reassemble the information into a complete picture. Emily made it easy. The next morning, she left for work an hour early, claiming she needed to prepare for a client presentation. I waited 30 minutes, then called her office. Her assistant, Jennifer, cheerfully informed me that Emily wouldn't be in until after lunch due to a dentist appointment. Interesting. Emily's dental records showed her last cleaning was 3 months ago, and she had no upcoming appointments. I spent the morning in my own office, handling legitimate business, while my mind worked through the implications of what Monica had told me. By lunch, I'd made my decision. I drove downtown to the Meridian Gallery. The building was a converted warehouse in the Arts District, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. Very trendy, very expensive, very much the kind of place Emily would find sophisticated. I parked across the street and waited. At 12:47, Emily's silver BMW pulled into the small parking lot behind the gallery. She emerged wearing the kind of outfit I'd learned to recognize, designer casual, artfully disheveled, the uniform of someone trying to fit into a world she didn't belong to. Ethan Reeves met her at the back entrance. Even from a distance, their body language told the story Monica's photos had only hinted at. The way he touched her lower back as he guided her inside. The way she leaned into him, her face tilted up toward his with obvious adoration. 8 years of marriage, and my wife had never looked at me like that. I waited another hour before entering the gallery through the front door. A young woman with purple hair and multiple piercings greeted me with the kind of enthusiasm reserved for potential buyers. "Welcome to Meridian. I'm Chloe. Are you interested in anything particular?" "Just browsing," I said, pulling out my phone to take pictures of the price tags. "My wife mentioned this place, Emily Morrison. She works at Blackstone Financial." Chloe's face lit up. "Oh, Emily. She's amazing. She and Ethan have been working so hard on the corporate partnership proposal. It's going to be incredible when it goes through." "Partnership proposal?" for Blackstone to sponsor our Emerging Artists program. Emily says it's worth like $500,000 over 3 years. It would totally save us. Save them. So Monica had been right about the gallery's financial troubles. That's wonderful, I said. Emily's always been passionate about supporting the arts. She's so lucky to have found someone who really understands her vision, Chloe continued. Ethan says she's the most brilliant woman he's ever met. They make such a perfect team. Perfect team. I thanked Chloe and left before I said something that would blow my cover. That evening, Emily came home 3 hours late with gallery brochures in her purse and the scent of expensive cologne on her clothes. She kissed my cheek with lips that tasted like wine I hadn't shared and told me about her day at the office. Every word was a lie. Over the next week, I built my case with the methodical precision I'd learned in 15 years of corporate investigation. Emily's credit card statements revealed a pattern of deception going back 4 months. Lunches at intimate restaurants, shopping trips to boutiques that specialized in artistic clothing, hotel charges that coincided with Ethan's gallery events. Her phone records were even more damning. Hundreds of texts and calls to a number registered to E. Reeves' gallery. Most of them during business hours when she was supposed to be working on Blackstone projects. But the real treasure trove was her laptop. Emily had always been careless with digital security, using the same password for everything, our wedding anniversary. It took me less than 5 minutes to access her email accounts, her social media, her cloud storage. What I found there made Monica's evidence look amateur. Photos of Emily and Ethan together, intimate and explicit, email chains discussing not just their affair, but detailed plans to manipulate Blackstone's corporate giving program. Text messages where Emily shared confidential information about client accounts, budget allocations, and internal company politics. And then I found the folder labeled Future Plans. Inside were real estate listings for apartments in Soho, travel itineraries for European art tours, and a business plan for expanding the Meridian Gallery into a chain of high-end art spaces. All of it funded by money that didn't exist yet, money Emily was confident she could secure through her position at Blackstone. Money that required my Henderson acquisition to succeed because the commission would fund Emily's escape from our marriage. I sat in my home office staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal and felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, the anger, the sense of profound violation. But underneath it all was something colder, more focused. Emily thought she was playing chess while I played checkers. She had no idea I'd been playing chess my entire career. My phone rang. Monica's name appeared on the screen. "Jack, I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all. What can I do for you?" "I've been thinking about our conversation. Have you made a decision?" I looked at my laptop screen, at the photos of my wife in another man's arms, at the evidence of her systematic betrayal of everything we'd built together. "Yes," I said. "I have." "And? When do we start?" Monica's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than expose Emily's affair directly, we would let her destroy herself through her own ambition and carelessness. "The beauty of it," Monica explained during our clandestine meeting at an upscale coffee shop downtown, "is that Emily's already committed to a course of action she can't back out of. She's promised Ethan that Blackstone will fund his gallery expansion, and she's been telling him she has the influence to make it happen." "But she doesn't." "Exactly. The decision ultimately comes down to the board, and the board listens to me. Emily's been operating under the assumption that our personal relationship gives her special access, but she's miscalculated badly." I sipped my espresso, thinking through the implications. "So, we let her make the proposal?" "We encourage her to make the proposal, publicly, in front of the entire senior staff, and then we watch her credibility evaporate when it gets rejected." "That seems almost too easy." Monica's smile was sharp. "Oh, Jack, that's just the opening move. The real beauty comes when we reveal why the proposal was rejected, when we show everyone exactly how Emily's been mixing business with pleasure, using company resources to fund her personal relationships." Over the next 2 weeks, Monica and I orchestrated Emily's downfall with surgical precision. Monica began dropping hints about upcoming opportunities for corporate partnerships, making sure Emily overheard conversations about budget allocations and board priorities. I started working late, claiming pressure from the Henderson acquisition, giving Emily more freedom to pursue her affair. Emily took the bait completely. She began staying out later, claiming to attend networking events and industry mixers. Her stories became more elaborate, more detailed, as if the complexity of her lies could somehow make them more believable. She started talking about the importance of corporate social responsibility, about Blackstone's duty to support emerging artists. She had no idea that every conversation was being recorded. Monica had equipped me with a small digital recorder, barely larger than a thumb drive. Every time Emily launched into one of her speeches about art patronage or cultural investment, I captured her words. Every time she mentioned her special relationship with Monica or her inside knowledge of board decisions, I documented her claims. But the real breakthrough came when I followed her to one of Ethan's gallery events. The opening was for a new exhibition called Urban Metamorphosis, pretentious installations that looked like expensive garbage to my untrained eye. Emily arrived fashionably late, wearing a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before and jewelry that definitely hadn't come from me. She moved through the crowd like she belonged there, air-kissing artists and collectors, discussing technique and vision with the kind of confident ignorance that only comes from sleeping with the gallery owner. Ethan stayed close to her side, his hand possessively placed on her lower back, introducing her as his corporate liaison and strategic partner. I positioned myself near the bar, nursing a glass of wine and listening to conversations that made me freeze. Emily's been absolutely instrumental in developing our relationship with Blackstone, Ethan told a group of potential investors. She's got the board wrapped around her finger. The funding approval is basically a formality at this point. Emily laughed, the sound bright and confident. Ethan's being modest. The proposal speaks for itself. When you've got the right connections and the right vision, corporate partnerships are really just a matter of presentation. And timing, added a woman I recognized as a prominent art critic. These big financial firms are always looking for ways to improve their public image. Supporting emerging artists is perfect for that. Exactly, Emily agreed. Blackstone's been looking for the right cultural investment opportunity. We're giving them exactly what they need. I pulled out my phone and started recording, capturing not just Emily's words, but the entire context of her deception. Here was my wife, publicly claiming credit for a deal that didn't exist, making promises she couldn't keep, using her position at Blackstone to enhance her lover's business prospects. But the most damning moment came near the end of the evening when I overheard Emily and Ethan talking privately near the gallery's back office. "Are you sure about the timeline?" Ethan asked, his voice tight with anxiety. "I've got creditors breathing down my neck, and I've already committed to the Soho expansion based on this funding." "Baby, relax," Emily said, her hand stroking his cheek. "Monica's completely on board. She practically begged me to put together the proposal. The board meeting is next week, and after that, we're golden." "And your husband? He's not suspicious?" Emily's laugh was cold, dismissive. "Jack? Please. He's so buried in his little acquisition project, he barely knows I exist. Besides, he's always been more comfortable with numbers than people. He has no idea how real influence works." "What happens after the funding comes through?" "Then we execute the plan. I'll transition out of Blackstone gradually, claim I want to pursue my passion for arts administration. By the time anyone realizes what happened, we'll be running the most successful gallery chain on the East Coast." I had heard enough. More than enough. I slipped out of the gallery and drove home, my mind already working through the final phase of Monica's plan. Emily thought she was playing a game she'd already won. She had no idea that every move she'd made had been anticipated, documented, and prepared for. The board meeting was in 5 days. Emily's proposal would be submitted in 3 days. And in less than a week, my wife's carefully constructed web of lies would collapse completely. But as I pulled into our driveway and saw the lights on in our penthouse, I realized that Monica's plan, elegant as it was, wasn't enough for me. Emily had called me comfortable with numbers rather than people. She'd dismissed me as someone who didn't understand how real influence worked. She was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. The Blackstone financial boardroom was a temple to corporate power. Mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 14 senior executives sat around the table, including Monica at the head and me in my usual spot 3 seats to her right. Emily entered at exactly 2 p.m., carrying a leather portfolio and wearing her most professional suit. She looked confident, prepared, completely unaware that she was walking into an execution. "Thank you all for accommodating this special presentation," Monica said smoothly. "Emily has prepared a proposal for a significant corporate partnership that could enhance Blackstone's community profile while supporting emerging artists." Emily smiled, activated the presentation screen, and launched into her pitch with the kind of polished enthusiasm that had made her successful in corporate relations. "The Meridian Gallery represents exactly the kind of cultural investment opportunity that aligns with Blackstone's values," she began, clicking through slides of artistic installations and financial projections. "Their Emerging Artists program has identified 12 promising talents who could benefit from corporate sponsorship." I watched the faces around the table. Most were politely interested, a few looked skeptical, and Monica maintained an expression of neutral attention. Emily had no idea that every person in this room had already seen the evidence of her affair, her misuse of company resources, and her unauthorized promises to Ethan Reeves. The total investment over 3 years would be $450,000, Emily continued, with significant tax benefits and positive publicity for Blackstone. The gallery owner, Ethan Reeves, has an impeccable reputation in the art community and has expressed enthusiasm about partnering with a firm of our caliber. She was good, I had to admit. Professional, articulate, persuasive. If the board hadn't already known the truth about her relationship with Ethan, they might have been convinced. Questions? Monica asked when Emily finished. David Chen raised his hand. Emily, how did you first learn about this opportunity? Through my research into cultural investment options, Emily replied smoothly. I've been developing relationships with several gallery owners and arts administrators as part of my community outreach responsibilities. I see. And you've had extensive contact with Mr. Reeves during this research process? A slight flush appeared on Emily's cheeks, but her voice remained steady. Of course. Due diligence requires thorough communication with potential partners. Absolutely, agreed Sarah Martinez, our chief financial officer. Speaking of due diligence, have you reviewed the gallery's financial statements, their tax records, their client base, and revenue streams? Emily's confidence flickered for just a moment. I've reviewed the materials, Mr. Reeves provided. Yes. Interesting, Sarah continued, because our independent financial analysis shows that Meridian Gallery is currently operating at a significant loss, has defaulted on 2 commercial loans in the past year, and is facing potential bankruptcy within 6 months without immediate capital infusion. The room went silent. Emily's face went pale. That wasn't reflected in the materials I received, she stammered. Of course not, Monica said quietly. Mr. Reeves has been rather selective about the information he shares, just as you've been selective about the information you've shared with us. Emily's eyes darted around the room, finally settling on Monica with growing panic. I don't understand. Monica activated her own presentation screen. The first slide showed Emily's credit card statements, with charges at romantic restaurants highlighted in red. The second showed her phone records, with hundreds of calls and texts to Ethan's number. The third showed security camera footage of Emily and Ethan in the Blackstone parking garage, locked in an embrace that was anything but professional. Emily Morrison, Monica said formally, you are terminated from Blackstone Financial, effective immediately, for misuse of company resources, conflicts of interest, and violation of professional conduct standards. Emily's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Around the table, 14 faces stared at her with expressions ranging from disappointment to disgust. She looked at me desperately, as if I might somehow save her. I met her eyes and smiled. Security will escort you to your office to collect personal items, Monica continued. Your company credit cards have been canceled, your access to company systems has been revoked, and your final paycheck will be adjusted to reflect reimbursement for unauthorized expenses. Jack, Emily whispered, her voice breaking. Jack, please. You have to help me. This is all a misunderstanding. I stood up slowly, savoring the moment. Actually, Emily, I think everyone understands perfectly. You've been having an affair with Ethan Reeves for 4 months, you've been using company resources to fund your relationship, and you've been making unauthorized promises about corporate partnerships to benefit your lover's failing business. How did you know? Because I'm comfortable with numbers, remember? And it turns out that numbers don't lie. Unlike people. Emily's face crumpled. She looked around the room one more time, searching for any sign of sympathy or support. She found none. This isn't over, she said, her voice shaking with rage and desperation. I'll fight this. I'll sue for wrongful termination. You'll do nothing, Monica interrupted. Because if you pursue any legal action against Blackstone, we'll be forced to share all of our evidence with the appropriate authorities, including evidence of your attempts to manipulate corporate funding for personal gain, which could be construed as fraud. Emily's threat faded in her throat. She gathered her portfolio with trembling hands and walked toward the door, her heels clicking on the marble floor like a countdown timer. At the doorway, she turned back one final time. Jack, she said, her voice barely audible. I loved you. I really did. No, I replied, my voice calm and steady. You loved what I could give you. There's a difference. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The boardroom remained silent for several long moments. Finally, Monica spoke. Well, that was unpleasant, but necessary. Now, Jack, about your Henderson acquisition. I believe a promotion is in order. But I was already thinking beyond promotions, beyond corporate politics, beyond the comfortable world of Blackstone Financial. Emily's betrayal had awakened something in me, something cold and calculating and utterly without mercy. She thought our story was over. She had no idea it was just beginning. 3 days after Emily's termination, I drove downtown to the Meridian Gallery. It was a Tuesday afternoon, overcast and cold, the kind of day that made the arts district look shabby rather than bohemian. The gallery was closed. A small sign in the window apologized for the inconvenience and promised reopening soon. Through the glass, I could see Ethan Reeves pacing back and forth in the main exhibition space, his phone pressed to his ear, his face twisted with frustration. I knocked on the door. Ethan looked up, startled. When he saw me, his expression shifted from surprise to wariness to something approaching fear. He approached the door slowly, like a man walking toward his own execution. "We're closed," he called through the glass. "I know. I'm Jack Morrison, Emily's husband." The color drained from his face. He stood frozen for several seconds, then reluctantly unlocked the door. "Look," he said, stepping back as I entered. "I know this is awkward, but—" "Awkward?" I laughed, the sound echoing in the empty gallery. "Ethan, my friend, awkward is spilling wine on someone's shirt. Awkward is forgetting someone's name at a party. What you've been doing with my wife goes considerably beyond awkward." He tried to maintain his composure, but his hands were shaking. "Jack, I want you to know that Emily and I never meant for things to happen the way they did. It developed naturally." "Naturally, right." I walked deeper into the gallery, examining the installations that Emily had praised so enthusiastically. Up close, they looked even more like expensive garbage. "Tell me, Ethan, how naturally did it develop when you convinced my wife to risk her career to save your failing business? That's not what? Not true?" I turned to face him, and something in my expression made him take another step backward. "I've seen the financial records, Ethan. I know exactly how much trouble you're in. Default notices, creditor liens, bankruptcy filings. The Meridian Gallery is finished." "We can work something out," he said desperately. "I know Emily's situation has changed, but there are other funding sources, other partnerships." "No, there aren't." I pulled out my phone and showed him a series of emails. "I've spent the last 3 days contacting every major corporation in the city, every arts foundation, every potential investor who might have been interested in your little gallery. I've shared some very interesting information about your business practices, your financial management, and your tendency to mix business with pleasure." His face went white. "You can't do that. It's slander." "Is it?" "Because I have photographs, Ethan. Security camera footage, credit card receipts, phone records, everything documented, everything verified, everything completely legal." I smiled. "You see, unlike my wife, I actually understand how influence works." He sank into one of the gallery's pretentious metal chairs, his head in his hands. "What do you want?" "Want? I don't want anything, Ethan. I've already gotten everything I need." "Then why are you here?" I walked over to one of his installations, a twisted sculpture made of recycled metal and broken glass, supposedly representing the fragmentation of modern urban life. It looked like the kind of thing you'd find in a junkyard. "I'm here to deliver a message," I said, running my finger along the sculpture's sharp edges. "Emily seems to think that what happened at Blackstone was just a temporary setback. She's been calling me, texting me, showing up at my office. She seems to believe we can work through this, that our marriage can survive her betrayal." "Maybe it can," Ethan said quietly. "People make mistakes. Sometimes they can be forgiven." "Forgiven?" I looked at him with genuine surprise. "Ethan, you misunderstand completely. I'm not here because I want forgiveness. I'm here because I want Emily to understand the full scope of what she's lost." I pulled out my phone again and showed him a different set of documents. "These are the financial records for your gallery's creditors. It turns out that several of them are owned by subsidiaries of companies that do business with Blackstone Financial, companies that value our recommendations very highly." "What does that mean?" "It means that your creditors have agreed to accelerate their collection timeline. Instead of the 6-month grace period you were counting on, you now have 30 days to pay your debts in full, all of them." Ethan's face went gray. "That's impossible. I don't have that kind of money." "I know, which means the Meridian Gallery will be liquidated to satisfy your obligations. This building, your inventory, your equipment, all of it will be sold at auction." "You can't do this." "I'm not doing anything, Ethan. I'm simply allowing market forces to operate naturally, just like your relationship with my wife developed naturally." He stood up, anger finally overriding his fear. "This is insane. You're destroying my entire life over a relationship that had nothing to do with you." "Nothing to do with me?" My voice dropped to a whisper. "Ethan, you slept with my wife. You convinced her to risk everything we built together to save your pathetic excuse for a business. You made her believe she could have a future with you, a future funded by money stolen from the company that employed us both, and you think that has nothing to do with me? Emily made her own choices. Yes, she did, and now she gets to live with the consequences, just like you do. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Ethan? Emily's been staying at the Marriott downtown since her termination, room 1247, in case you wanted to console each other. How do you know that? I smiled. Because I'm the one paying for it. Emily's credit cards were canceled along with her employment, and her savings account was frozen pending the investigation into her misuse of company funds. She literally has nowhere else to go. You're paying for her hotel room? For now. But my generosity has limits. The reservation expires tomorrow at noon. I left him standing in his doomed gallery, surrounded by the pretentious art that had cost him everything. As I walked to my car, I felt the same cold satisfaction I'd experienced in the boardroom 3 days earlier. Emily thought she understood the price of betrayal. She was about to learn how wrong she was. My phone rang as I drove back toward downtown. Emily's name flashed on the screen, along with that photo from our honeymoon in Tuscany. 2 people who no longer existed, frozen in a moment of happiness that now felt like ancient history. I answered on the 4th ring. Hello, Emily. Jack, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for days. We need to talk. Do we? Please. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but we can work through this. What happened with Ethan, it was a mistake. A terrible mistake, but it's over now. Is it? Yes, completely. I ended things with him after what happened at Blackstone. I choose you, Jack. I choose our marriage. I pulled into the Marriott's parking garage and found a spot with a clear view of the hotel entrance. That's interesting, Emily, because I just had a very enlightening conversation with Ethan about your future together. He seemed to think you were still very much committed to your relationship. Silence on the other end of the line. Emily, are you there? You went to see him? Her voice was barely a whisper. I did. We discussed business. His business, specifically, and how it's about to cease existing. Jack, what did you do? I did what you should have done months ago, Emily. I chose a side. I hung up and settled in to wait. Through the hotel's glass doors, I could see the lobby clearly. It didn't take long. Emily appeared at the elevator bank 12 minutes later, moving with the kind of desperate urgency that comes from watching your entire world collapse in real time. She was wearing jeans and a sweater I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her face pale and strained. She looked like a woman who'd finally realized she was drowning. I started my engine and drove home, leaving my wife to face the consequences of her choices alone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for revenge. But tonight, I was content to let Emily and Ethan console each other in their shared destruction. After all, they'd made such a perfect team. The Henderson acquisition closed on a Friday morning in November, 3 weeks after Emily's termination. The signing took place in Blackstone's main conference room, with representatives from both companies, a small army of lawyers, and enough paperwork to deforest a small country. I sat at the head of the table, wearing my best suit and the kind of satisfied smile that comes from watching 18 months of work reach a successful conclusion. The commission alone would be enough to buy a house in the Hamptons, but the real value was in what the deal represented: validation, recognition, and a clear path to the executive suite. Monica caught my eye from across the table and nodded approvingly. Since Emily's departure, our working relationship had evolved into something approaching genuine partnership. She'd kept her word about the promotion. I was now Senior Vice President of Strategic Development, with my own department and a corner office that offered spectacular views of the city. Congratulations, Jack, said Robert Henderson, the client whose company we'd just acquired. This has been the smoothest transaction I've ever been part of. Your attention to detail is remarkable. Thank you. I believe in being thorough. It shows. If you ever decide to leave Blackstone, give me a call. We could use someone with your skills. I smiled and shook his hand, but my attention was already elsewhere. Through the conference room's glass walls, I could see Emily in the lobby, talking to the security guard at the reception desk. She was wearing a black coat I didn't recognize and carrying a small purse that looked expensive but worn, like something purchased secondhand. She'd been trying to reach me for 3 weeks. Phone calls, emails, text messages, even a handwritten letter delivered to my office. All of them variations on the same theme. She was sorry, she'd made a terrible mistake, she wanted to work things out. I'd ignored them all. The meeting concluded with handshakes and congratulations. As the clients and lawyers filed out, Monica approached me with a knowing look. Your wife is in the lobby, she said quietly. I noticed. Security offered to escort her out, but I told them to wait for your instructions. I gathered my papers and straightened my tie. No need, I'll handle it. Emily saw me coming before I reached the lobby. Her face lit up with desperate hope, the kind of expression you see on drowning people who spot a life preserver. She looked thinner than I remembered, older, worn down by the weight of consequences she'd never seen coming. "Jack," she said, stepping forward, "thank you for seeing me." "I haven't agreed to see you, Emily. I'm simply leaving the building. Please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I glanced at my watch. It was 2:30 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. I had nowhere urgent to be, and I found myself curious about what Emily thought she could possibly say that would matter. 5 minutes, I agreed. We walked to a small seating area near the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows. Emily perched on the edge of a leather chair like she might need to run at any moment. I remained standing, looking down at the woman who'd shared my bed for 8 years and betrayed me for 4 months. "I know you hate me," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know what I did was unforgivable, but Jack, I need you to understand." "Understand what? That you were unhappy? That you felt neglected? That Ethan offered you something I couldn't? It wasn't about that." "No? Then what was it about, Emily? Because I've had 3 weeks to think about this, and I'm genuinely curious about your perspective." She looked out the window at the city below, gathering her thoughts. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger but filled with a sadness that might have moved me once. "It was about feeling invisible," she said. "We'd become strangers, Jack. Roommates who happened to share a bank account and a bed. When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you asked me about my dreams, my fears, my hopes for the future? When was the last time you told me the truth about anything?" The accusation hit her like a physical blow. She flinched, then nodded slowly. "You're right. I became a liar. But I became a liar because I was afraid to tell you how empty I felt, how lonely I was in our marriage. Ethan made me feel seen, Jack. He made me feel like I mattered. And destroying our marriage was worth that feeling? No." Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "Nothing was worth that. I know that now. I've lost everything, Jack. My job, my reputation, my future. Ethan's gallery closed last week. He's moving back to California to live with his parents. I'm staying in a studio apartment in Queens and working as a temp at a law firm that doesn't even know my real name." I felt something that might have been sympathy, but it was quickly overwhelmed by a colder emotion. "What do you want from me, Emily?" "I want my husband back. I want the chance to rebuild what we had, to make it better than it was before. I want to prove that our marriage is worth fighting for." "Our marriage ended the first time you kissed him." "It doesn't have to stay ended. People recover from affairs, Jack. Couples survive betrayal. We could go to counseling, take time to heal, learn to trust each other again." I looked at this woman who'd once been the center of my world, who'd shared my ambitions and my bed and my dreams of success. She was still beautiful, still intelligent, still capable of the charm that had first attracted me 15 years ago when we were both young and hungry, and convinced we could conquer the corporate world together. But she was also a stranger. The Emily I'd married would never have risked everything for an affair with a pretentious gallery owner. The Emily I'd married would never have lied so skillfully, so completely, for so long. "No," I said simply. "Jack, please." "No, Emily. We're not going to counseling. We're not going to rebuild. We're not going to learn to trust each other again. We're getting divorced." The words hung in the air between us like worst verdict. Emily's face crumpled completely. "I've already filed the papers," I continued. "Irreconcilable differences, no contest. The settlement is generous. You'll get half of everything we accumulated during the marriage, minus the reimbursements for your misuse of company funds. You should be able to afford something better than a studio in Queens." "I don't want your money, Jack. I want you." "You can't have me. That option expired when you decided that Ethan Reeves was worth more than 8 years of marriage." I turned to leave, then paused and looked back at her one final time. "For what it's worth, Emily, I understand why you did it. Our marriage had become comfortable, predictable, maybe even boring. Ethan offered excitement, passion, the thrill of forbidden romance. I get it. Then why can't you forgive me?" I smiled, and something in that expression made her shrink back in her chair. "Because you called me just the neighbor, Emily. Because you dismissed me as someone who was comfortable with numbers but didn't understand how real influence worked. Because you thought I was too boring, too predictable, too weak to fight back when you betrayed me." I leaned down so we were at eye level, so she could see exactly what I'd become. "You were wrong about that. Very, very wrong." I left her sitting in that chair, surrounded by the marble and glass monuments to corporate power, crying for a marriage that had faded the moment she'd chosen ambition over loyalty. As I walked toward the elevator, I felt the same cold satisfaction that had sustained me through 3 weeks of systematic revenge. Emily had learned the price of betrayal. Ethan had learned the cost of seducing another man's wife. Monica had gotten her corporate victory. Everyone had gotten exactly what they deserved. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, already thinking about the weekend ahead. There was a new restaurant in Soho I wanted to try, an art gallery opening that might be interesting, maybe even a social event where I could meet someone new, someone who understood that Jack Morrison was nobody's neighbor. The doors closed, and I rose toward my new life, leaving the wreckage of the old 130 floors below.